Taking things a step up from your floor bridge would be your hip thrust. Your hip thrust takes you through a very similar range of motion and engagement of muscles. You're still going to feel your hamstrings and your glutes turn on with this. You're still going to want to stabilize through the core. It's just taking you through a larger range of motion, and so it's granting you more access to your muscles than the floor bridge does. You also lose a little bit of stability, so it's a little harder to maintain that nice straight spine as you do these things. So you're going to want a bench or a couch with a firm enough lip that you feel safe, like you're not wiggling around too much. You have two options. You can sit on the floor to start, or you can start from the bench. If you're starting from the bench, you're going to go ahead and lower yourself down so that the back of your shoulder blades, between your shoulder blades, is on the bench. You're going to walk your feet out. From here, you're going to want to set that torso. So think pelvis, ribs tucked together. You get that tension through your core because you're bracing everything and holding it tight. Feet are about hip distance apart. You're going to go ahead and tuck your chin if possible. You're going to push through the heels, develop that tension in the glutes and hamstrings, and then use that tension to bridge up. You will break at the hip to lower with control, hinging across the back. So it looks like this. Lower down, drive up using those glutes. A few things you want to avoid. You want to avoid allowing those ribs to flare on the way down. See how much bend I have in my spine? Well, that's not catastrophic without weight. Once I start loading it, it could get really ugly, right? So you want to make sure that you are hinging here rather than bending here. The bend comes in the hips. Another thing to look out for, even if I am keeping this tight, if I lower myself down too far, I will eventually untuck at the pelvis here. You'll see how my hips kind of whoop. That's too low. If you end up untucking, then you're loading that spine again. So stop right before you start to feel like you've lost all the tension in your glutes. That'll keep things in the legs for you. Now, if you're going to start from the floor, which is what I would recommend if you're using a large barbell, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute, you're going to go ahead and get your feet situated, kind of use your arms to leverage you up to that starting position, and then do the same thing. So ways to progress this. You can progress this by holding that top for a longer period of time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds, right? Not something I would necessarily recommend with this protocol that I've got programmed for you, but it's good to know that that's something you can do, right? You can also weight it. If you're using dumbbells, not ideal, but they work in a pinch. A dumbbell, kettlebell, like a medicine ball, something like that. They go here, core tight, drive up. Same idea. Ideally, if you're going to weight these, you'll use a barbell. If you decide to weight this movement, you want to make sure that you're doing that consistent weight throughout the program. It's one thing if you start the first few days and you're like, oh gosh, that was way too easy. Give it a few days because the intensity ramps. But if you're sure that it's too easy, add a little bit of weight, but stick with it, right? I just want you to avoid dropping a bunch of weight as the program gets harder and adding a bunch of weight on the lighter beginning end. You want to keep the same weight throughout the entire program. So if you're doing a barbell, it can be really handy to have one of these. They are called squat sponges. You can probably pick one up for $20 to $30 online. They save your hips. If you don't have one of these and you've got a heavy barbell, you will often find that you get bruising, and as sexy as that is, it's not super comfortable. So I'm going to use my squat sponge. I'm going to roll my barbell over, put that squat sponge on the barbell, and then what's nice is if you're using tall Olympic plates, you sit down and you just roll it right over your hips. From here, when I bend my feet, that'll come off the ground a little bit, get my core tight, breathe out on the way up, lower down with control, breathe out on the way up, lower down with control. And that's your barbell hip thrust. If you're feeling it in your hamstrings, you probably have your feet a little too close. If you're feeling a little tension in your knee, like you're straining through here, then you might want to walk your feet in a little bit. Play with the distance of your feet from your body and from the bench, so you really feel good distribution between the hamstrings and the glutes. You don't want to feel too much hamstring. It should be more of a glute drive with a little sprinkle of hamstring as well. All right, enjoy.